Admiral Park stood alone on the observation deck of the TSS Typhoon. The stars stretched out before her like scattered diamonds on black cloth. She had looked at those same stars 1,000 times before, but tonight they looked different. Tonight they looked like targets. The Typhoon was the first Hurricane-class battleship ever built by the Terran Defense Force. It was massive, 5 kilometers long from bow to stern. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, designed to absorb sensor scans and disappear into the void. The ship carried weapons that no alien species had ever seen, weapons that could crack moons and boil oceans. And Park was its commander. She was 53 years old. Her hair was gray at the temples, pulled back in a tight military bun. Her face showed the lines of someone who had seen too much death and carried too much responsibility. But her eyes were sharp, cold, the eyes of a woman who had stopped believing in mercy 6 months ago. 6 months ago, the galaxy had taught humanity a lesson. Now humanity was about to teach one back. The door behind her slid open. Captain walked in, his boots clicking against the metal floor. He was younger than the Admiral by 15 years, tall, with broad shoulders and a face that still held some softness despite years of military service. He stopped beside her and looked out at the stars. "Fleet assembly is complete," he said. 47 vessels, all in position. Did not turn her head, and the Confederacy. No response. Their patrol routes remain unchanged. They have no idea we are here. A small smile touched the corner of his lips. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a hunter who had finally cornered her prey. For 300 years, humanity had been a minor player in galactic politics. When humans first discovered faster-than-light travel and ventured out into the cosmos, they found a galaxy already filled with ancient civilizations. The Helix Confederacy controlled everything. 12 alien species, united under one banner, ruling the trade routes and setting the laws. The Confederacy looked at humans and saw nothing special, just another primitive species crawling up from a death world. Earth was considered hostile, too much gravity, too much radiation, too many predators. The fact that humans had survived there at all was seen as a curiosity, nothing more. So the Confederacy tolerated humanity. They allowed human colonies to exist on the edges of civilized space. They permitted human merchants to trade, though always at a disadvantage. They smiled their alien smiles and patted humanity on the head like a pet that had learned a new trick. And humanity accepted it. For 300 years they accepted it. The human government believed in diplomacy. They believed that if they were patient, if they proved themselves useful and peaceful, the Confederacy would eventually accept them as equals. So they followed the rules. They paid the taxes. They bowed their heads and said yes to every demand. Had believed it too, once. She had joined the Terran Defense Force as a young woman full of ideals. She had risen through the ranks, always following orders, always trusting that her leaders knew best. She had spent decades protecting human shipping lanes from pirates and enforcing Confederacy trade regulations. Then came New. New was an agricultural colony in the Outer Rim. Nothing special about it. Just farmers and families growing food for other human colonies. 14 million people living simple lives under an orange sun. The Confederacy decided they wanted New's harvest, all of it. They sent their enforcers, the Armada, to collect. There were creatures with hard shells and cold eyes. They served as the Confederacy's military arm, and they enjoyed their work. When New's governor refused to surrender the harvest, saying his people would starve without it, they did not negotiate. They did not threaten. They simply opened fire. Orbital bombardment, plasma cannons turning cities to glass, kinetic strikes shattering mountains. In 6 hours, 14 million humans were dead. Men, women, children, burned alive or crushed under rubble or suffocated as the atmosphere boiled away. Had been stationed 3 systems away when she received the news. She remembered standing in her quarters, reading the report, feeling something inside her break, not her heart. Her heart had broken long ago, watching friends die in pointless skirmishes. No, what broke was her faith, her belief that peace was possible, her trust in the system. She had submitted her resignation that night, but before she could send it, another message arrived, a priority transmission from Earth Command. Eyes only. The message was simple. Earth was done talking. For years, in secret, they had been building something, a new class of warship, something the galaxy had never seen, and they needed someone to command it, someone who understood what was at stake, someone who would not hesitate. They chose Park. Now 6 months later, she stood on the bridge of the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created. Behind her, hidden in the shadow of a dead moon, 46 other warships waited. Cruisers, destroyers, frigates, support vessels, all crewed by men and women who had volunteered for this mission, all of them understanding that they might not return. "The crew is ready," said quietly. "Morale is high. They know why we are here." Finally turned to look at him. "And you, Captain, are you ready?" Met her gaze. His jaw was tight, but his eyes were steady. "My sister lived on new. She had 2 children, a boy and a girl. I never got to meet them." Nodded slowly. So many of them had stories like that. The Typhoon was crewed by the grieving, by the angry, by those who had lost everything and had nothing left to fear. "Then we understand each other," she said. She turned and walked toward the command center, falling into step beside her. The corridors of the Typhoon were wide and functional. No decorations, no art, just metal and lights and the hum of massive engines. This ship was not built for comfort. It was built for war. They entered the bridge. Officers sat at their stations, screens glowing with data. Lieutenant Han looked up from the tactical console. She was young, barely 30, with sharp features and quick hands. The best weapons officer in the fleet. "Admiral on deck," she announced. The bridge crew straightened in their seats, waved them down. "Status report." "All systems operational," said. "Weapons charged, shields at full capacity. The fleet is holding formation and awaiting orders." Walked to the central command chair and sat down. The chair molded to her body, screens flickering to life around her, showing her everything. The position of every ship, the status of every system, the location of their enemy. The Armada was patrolling the Antares corridor, 3 light-years away. 120 warships, the pride of the Confederacy's military. They had no idea what was coming. "Open a channel to the fleet," said. A soft chime indicated the channel was open. Every captain on every ship would hear her words. "This is Admiral Park. For 300 years we tried to be good neighbors. We followed their rules. We accepted their insults. We buried our dead and told ourselves that peace was worth the price." She paused, letting the words sink in. 6 months ago, they showed us the truth. There is no peace with tyrants. There is no coexistence with those who see us as prey. They killed 14 million of our people and expected us to do nothing. They were wrong. Her voice hardened. "Today we stop being prey. Today we remind the galaxy that humans evolved on a death world. We are not soft. We are not weak. We are the apex predators of Earth, and we have finally stopped pretending otherwise." She gripped the arms of her chair. "All ships prepare for hyperspace jump. Target, Antares corridor. We have a debt to collect." The bridge hummed with activity. Officers shouted coordinates. Engines roared to life. The Typhoon trembled as its massive hyperspace drives charged. Looked out at the stars one last time. Somewhere out there, they were going about their business, confident in their power, certain of their superiority. They had no idea that the hurricane was coming. "Jump," commanded. The stars stretched into lines, and the Terran fleet vanished into hyperspace. The Antares corridor was the most important trade route in the galaxy. Thousands of ships passed through it every day, carrying goods and passengers between the core worlds and the outer colonies. Whoever controlled the corridor controlled the economy, and for 500 years, the Helix Confederacy had controlled everything. High Commander Prime sat in his command throne aboard the flagship Crimson Claw. He was an impressive specimen of his species. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his body was covered in thick black armor plating. His 4 arms were folded across his chest, and his compound eyes scanned the tactical display with the bored patience of a predator who had not faced a real challenge in decades. They were warriors. It was what they were born for, what they lived for. Their society was built on combat and conquest. But these days, there was little true fighting left. The Confederacy had crushed all resistance long ago. Now they mostly served as enforcers, collecting taxes and punishing those who broke the rules. It was beneath them, but it was their duty. "Commander," one of his officers called out, "long-range sensors are detecting an anomaly." His mandibles clicked with mild interest. "Define anomaly." "Multiple hyperspace signatures, incoming from Sector 7, configuration unknown." Leaned forward slightly. Unknown configurations were rare. Every species in the Confederacy used standardized technology. Unauthorized modifications were forbidden. This was either smugglers with illegal ships or something far more interesting. "How many signatures?" The officer checked his console, and his voice carried a note of confusion. 47 vessels, Commander, but the lead ship. Our sensors cannot determine its size. There is interference." Before could respond, the space in front of his fleet rippled and tore. Hyperspace windows opened like wounds in reality, and ships poured through. Human ships. Recognized the design immediately. The angular hulls, the aggressive lines. Terran Defense Force vessels. He had seen them before, small patrol ships that scattered at the first sign of presence. Easy prey. But the ship that emerged last was nothing like he had ever seen. The TSS Typhoon dropped out of hyperspace like a mountain falling from the sky. 5 kilometers of dark metal and bristling weapons. It dwarfed everything around it, including its own flagship. The Crimson Claw was considered one of the largest warships in the Confederacy, and this human vessel made it look like a toy. For the first time in many years, felt something cold move through his chest. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. Fear. "What is that?" he demanded. His officers were scrambling, trying to get readings. But every sensor they aimed at the massive ship returned nothing but static. Something about its hull was interfering with their technology, scrambling their targeting systems, blinding their weapons. On the bridge of the Typhoon, Lieutenant Han watched the fleet with a predator's focus. Her fingers danced across her console, monitoring the enemy's confused attempts to lock onto them. "Their targeting systems are completely scrambled," she reported, unable to hide her satisfaction. "They are blind." Admiral Park sat in her command chair, watching the tactical display. They had 120 ships. Her fleet had 47. On paper, the odds were against them, but paper did not account for the Typhoon. "Open a channel," she ordered. "All frequencies." The communications officer, "Channel open, Admiral," stood and straightened her uniform. When she spoke, her voice was calm and clear, transmitted across the void to every ship in the Armada. "Armada, this is Admiral Park of the Terran Defense Force. 6 months ago, your fleet destroyed the human colony of Nu. 14 million of my people were killed. Men, women, and children burned alive because they refused to surrender their food to your inspectors." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "I am here to collect what is owed." On the Crimson Claw's mandibles spread in what passed for a sneer among his kind. The fear he had felt moments ago was already fading, replaced by familiar contempt. Humans, always talking, always making threats they could not back up. He activated his own communication system. "You dare threaten the Confederacy. Your species is nothing. You are prey animals from a poison world. We tolerated your existence out of pity. Now you come here with your little ships and your big words." His forearms unfolded as he rose to his full height. "I personally ordered the cleansing of Nu. Your people screamed as they burned. They begged for mercy. There was none, and there will be none for you." He turned to his weapons officer. "All ships target the human fleet, destroy them." The Armada responded instantly. 120 warships powered their weapons and prepared to fire. Plasma cannons charged. Missile bays opened. The massed firepower of the Confederacy's greatest military force aimed at the tiny human fleet. On the Typhoon, Captain watched the enemy fleet power up. His hand rested on his console, ready to coordinate the fighter squadrons. Around him, officers tensed at their stations. But Admiral Park showed no emotion. She simply looked at the tactical display, watching the ships glow red as they charged their weapons. "Admiral," said, her voice tight, "they are about to fire." "I know," replied calmly. "Should we raise shields? Evasive maneuvers?" Shook her head slightly. "No, let them fire first. Let them see what it does." The opened fire. 120 ships unleashed their weapons at once. Plasma bolts crossed the void. Missiles streaked through space. Kinetic rounds accelerated to impossible speeds. The combined firepower was enough to destroy a small moon. It struck the Typhoon like a wave hitting a cliff. The bridge shuddered slightly. Officers gripped their consoles. But that was all. The impacts registered on the damage display as minor fluctuations in shield strength. The Typhoon's advanced armor, developed in secret for decades, absorbed the enemy fire like it was nothing. Commander Lee's voice came through from engineering. "Hull integrity at 99.7%. Their weapons are barely scratching the ablative layers." Allowed herself a small nod. The Confederacy had grown complacent. They had been using the same weapons technology for centuries, believing no one could challenge them. They had no idea what human engineers could create when properly motivated. On the Crimson Claw stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His entire fleet had just fired their most powerful weapons at the human flagship, and it had done nothing. "Fire again," he shouted. "Concentrate all fire on that ship." Another volley, another wave of destruction, another non-result. The Typhoon hung in space, untouched, unconcerned, and then its weapon ports began to glow. Chief Weapons Officer sat at the main fire control station. He was a quiet man, 50 years old, with graying hair and steady hands. He had spent his entire career designing and testing weapons. The Typhoon's main batteries were his masterpiece. Concentrated kinetic accelerators paired with plasma fusion warheads. Each shot delivered the energy of a small nuclear explosion, focused into a beam barely a meter wide. Nothing in the galaxy could withstand it. "Weapons charged and ready," reported. Looked at the tactical display one more time. 120 enemy ships, thousands of warriors, all of them complicit in the death of Nu. "Target their forward destroyer groups," she said. "Weapons free." "Press the firing control." The Typhoon's main battery spoke. 3 beams of blinding white light lanced across the void. They struck 3 destroyers simultaneously. For a fraction of a second, the ships glowed like miniature suns. Then they simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, atomized, reduced to expanding clouds of superheated particles. The explosions were so violent that the electromagnetic pulse knocked out power on nearby vessels. Ships tumbled out of formation, their systems fried. Debris scattered in every direction. Silence fell across the fleet. For a long moment, no one moved, no one fired. They simply stared at the empty space where 3 of their warships had been. His compound eyes flickered as he processed what he had just witnessed. 3 ships, gone, in an instant. His mandibles worked silently, no words coming out. "Reload," Admiral Park said quietly. "Target their carrier groups next." The Terran fleet began to move. Smaller frigates darted forward, their engines flaring as they weaved between enemy lines. Cruisers formed battle lines, their own weapons charging. Fighter squadrons launched from the Typhoon's massive hangar bays, filling the void with hundreds of small attack craft. And at the center of it all, the Typhoon advanced, slow, inevitable, unstoppable. The fleet finally recovered from their shock. His voice cut through the chaos, rallying his forces. All ships attack, destroy the smaller vessels, overwhelm them with numbers. The battle truly began. Ships swarmed forward, trying to use their numerical advantage. They fired at the Terran frigates, managing to score hits on a few. One human destroyer took a critical hit and began venting atmosphere. But for every hit the Terran fleet scored 10. Hand-coordinated the Typhoon's secondary batteries, picking off enemy fighters and bombers before they could reach the human fleet. Directed his squadrons with precision, his pilots dancing through enemy formations and striking at vulnerable points. And continued to fire the main batteries, again and again. Each shot another ship erased from existence. 20 minutes into the battle, they had lost 40 ships. The Terrans had lost 3. Watched his fleet dying and felt something he had never felt before. Helplessness. These humans were not fighting like prey. They were fighting like predators, like hunters who had been waiting for this moment their entire lives. "All ships," he transmitted, his voice cracking. "Retreat, jump to hyperspace, now." But when his navigation officer tried to plot a course, the console flashed red. "Commander, we cannot jump. Something is preventing our hyperspace drives from engaging." His eyes widened. "What?" On the Typhoon, Lieutenant Hand smiled grimly. "Gravity interdictors are holding. They are not going anywhere." Admiral Park leaned back in her chair. They were trapped. Their fleet was being destroyed piece by piece, and they had no escape. "Continue firing," she ordered. "Leave no survivors." The hurricane had arrived, and there would be no shelter from the storm. Chief Weapons Officer had dreamed of this moment for 20 years. Ever since he was a young engineer, watching human ships run from patrols, swallowing humiliation to avoid conflict. He had known then that the galaxy would never respect humanity until humanity made them afraid. Now, watching warships vanish in flashes of white fire, he felt no joy, only a cold satisfaction that the work was finally being done. "Main battery recharged," he announced, "ready to fire." "Target the heavy cruiser on our port side," Admiral Park ordered. Adjusted his targeting. The cruiser was trying to flank the Typhoon, hopping to find a weak point in its armor. There were no weak points. Human engineers had spent decades studying Confederacy weapons and building defenses against them. Every plate of armor, every shield generator, every structural beam had been designed with one purpose: to make the Typhoon invincible. He pressed the firing control. The cruiser exploded. Across the battlefield, the Terran fleet moved like a single organism. Captain's fighter squadrons swept through enemy formations in coordinated waves. They were outnumbered, but they were faster and more maneuverable. Fighters were built for intimidation, designed to look terrifying. Terran fighters were built to kill. Gold Squadron, break left and hit their missile boats, commanded from his position on the Typhoon's bridge. Silver Squadron, cover them. "Copy, Captain," came the reply. Gold Squadron engaging. On his tactical display, watched his pilots execute the maneuver perfectly. 12 fighters swept around a cluster of missile boats, their weapons blazing. The craft tried to turn and fight, but they were too slow. In seconds, all 6 missile boats were debris. Silver Squadron, enemy fighters incoming, bearing 357. "We see them, engaging." This was what human pilots excelled at: quick thinking, adaptation, the ability to make split-second decisions without waiting for orders. The military operated on strict hierarchies. Every action required approval from a superior. By the time a pilot received permission to change tactics, a human pilot had already killed him. Lieutenant Han continued her work at the tactical station, coordinating the Typhoon's secondary weapons while also monitoring the entire battle. Her display showed the positions of every ship, every fighter, every missile. She processed information faster than most computers, her mind trained through years of simulations and combat exercises. "Admiral," she reported, "the enemy fleet has lost 52 vessels. They are attempting to concentrate their remaining ships around the flagship." Studied the display. They were doing what any commander would do when outmatched: fall back to a defensive position, protect the command ship, and hope for reinforcements or a miracle. There would be no reinforcements. The nearest Confederacy fleet was 3 days away, and miracles did not exist. "Signal the fleet," ordered. "Encirclement pattern, no ship escapes." The Terran cruisers and destroyers began to spread out, forming a ring around the remaining forces. It was a classic hunting strategy, something humans had used for thousands of years on Earth. Surround the prey, cut off escape routes, then close in for the kill. On the Crimson Claw, High Commander watched his fleet die and felt his world crumbling. He had commanded the Armada for 30 years. He had crushed rebellions. He had destroyed colonies. He had never known defeat. "How is this possible?" he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. "They are humans, soft creatures, weak." His tactical officer spoke carefully, aware that might kill him for delivering bad news. "Commander, their weapons technology is beyond our understanding. Our shields have no effect. Our armor might as well be paper, and their targeting systems are immune to our countermeasures." Slammed one of his 4 fists against his throne's armrest, cracking the metal. "Then we fight with what we have. All ships focus fire on their smaller vessels, kill their escorts, force the flagship to fight alone." The remaining ships obeyed. 68 vessels turned their weapons away from the Typhoon and toward the Terran cruisers and destroyers. It was a desperate strategy, but not a stupid one. If they could destroy enough of the human escort ships, maybe they could find an opening to strike at the flagship. The Terran cruiser TSS took the brunt of the first volley. Its shields flared as plasma bolts hammered its hull. On the bridge, Captain gritted her teeth as her ship shook under the assault. "Shields at 60% and dropping," her tactical officer shouted. "Return fire," ordered, "all batteries." There was a Tempest-class cruiser, smaller than the Typhoon but still carrying formidable weapons. Its guns blazed, striking 2 destroyers and sending them spinning out of formation. But more ships were focusing on the now. They smelled blood. On the Typhoon, Admiral Park saw what was happening. They had realized they could not hurt her flagship, so they were going after her fleet instead. A logical response. A predator's response. She said calmly, "Shift primary targets, protect the." His fingers moved across his console. The Typhoon's massive weapon arrays pivoted, tracking the ships that were attacking the cruiser. He fired. 3 more destroyers died. The enemy assault on the faltered as ships suddenly found themselves being hunted instead of hunting. Screamed orders across the command channel, trying to maintain discipline, but panic was spreading through his fleet. Commander Lee's voice came through from engineering. "Admiral, main reactors are running at optimal efficiency. We can maintain this rate of fire indefinitely." Allowed herself a brief moment of appreciation for her engineering team. They had performed miracles in the years leading up to this battle. The Typhoon's reactors used a new type of fusion technology, harvesting energy from the quantum foam of space itself. It would never run out of power. It would never need to recharge. "Maintain fire rate," she ordered. "I want their fleet destroyed within the hour." The battle continued. 30 minutes later, the Armada had been reduced to 31 ships. The survivors had clustered around the Crimson Claw, using their flagship as a shield. It was pointless. The Typhoon's weapons could fire around obstacles, bend trajectories, hit targets that thought they were hidden. But paused. She looked at the crimson claw on her display, studying it. That ship held High Commander, the creature who had ordered the destruction of Nu, the one who had bragged about hearing her people scream as they burned. "Cease fire," she said. The bridge fell silent. Officers looked at each other in confusion. Hand turned from her console, eyebrows raised. "Admiral." "Cease fire," repeated. "Signal the fleet, hold position." The Terran fleet's weapons went silent. Across the battlefield, debris continued to drift and burn, but no new explosions lit the void. On the Crimson Claw stared at his display in disbelief. The humans had stopped firing. Why? Were they out of ammunition? Had something broken? Then a communication request appeared on his console, from the human flagship. He accepted it. Admiral Park's face appeared on his screen. Her expression was calm, almost peaceful, but her eyes held a coldness that made his armored skin prickle. "High Commander," she said, "your fleet is destroyed. Your ships are surrounded. Your weapons cannot hurt us and your drives cannot escape. Do you understand your situation?" His mandibles worked as he considered his response. Pride demanded defiance, but pride would not save his remaining ships. "What do you want, human?" "I want you to watch." The transmission ended. Before could react, the Typhoon's weapons fired again, but not at his ship, not at any ship. They fired at the debris field. The wreckage of vessels still drifted through space. Hull fragments, engine cores, escape pods. The Typhoon's weapons systematically destroyed all of it, every piece of debris, every pod, every potential survivor. Understood. The humans were not just destroying his fleet. They were erasing it, making sure no one escaped to tell the tale, making sure the galaxy would only hear the story humans wanted told. When the debris was gone, the Typhoon turned its attention back to the surviving ships. "Now," Admiral Park said quietly, "finish it." The final 31 vessels died in the next 8 minutes. Only the Crimson Claw remained. Sat in his command throne, surrounded by terrified officers waiting for death. But death did not come. Instead, the Typhoon simply approached, its massive hull blocking out the stars until it hung directly above the crippled flagship. Another communication request. "High Commander," Admiral Park said, "I am sending a boarding party. You will surrender yourself to my Marines. If you resist, I will destroy your ship with everyone aboard. Choose." His compound eyes flickered. He thought of fighting, of dying with honor. But what honor was there in dying against an enemy you could not even touch? "I surrender," he said. The word tasted like poison. On the Typhoon, Captain led his Marine detachment to the hangar bay. He was a large man, heavily built, with scars on his face and hands. He had spent 15 years fighting pirates and rebels on the Outer Rim, but this was different. This was personal. "Ready?" he asked his team. 12 Marines in powered combat, armor checked their weapons and nodded. "Let's go collect what's owed." Their shuttle launched, crossing the short distance to the crippled Crimson Claw. Behind them, the Typhoon watched and waited. The battle was over. But the message was just beginning. The shuttle docked with the Crimson Claw through a breach in its hull. Captain was the first to step through the airlock, his powered armor humming with energy. Behind him, 12 Marines followed in perfect formation. The ship was dying. Emergency lights flickered in the corridors. Atmosphere leaked from a dozen hull breaches. The artificial gravity was failing, making every step an effort. But did not care about the ship. He cared about one thing only. "Squad 2, secure the reactor room," he ordered through his helmet comm. "Squad 3, take the armory. Everyone else with me. We are going to the bridge." "Understood, Captain." The Marines split up, moving through the alien corridors with practiced efficiency. Crew members they encountered were given a simple choice: Surrender or die. Most chose to surrender. Those who did not were killed quickly and without mercy. Had no hatred for common soldiers. They were following orders just like any warrior, but their commander was different. Their commander had given the order to kill 14 million humans. Their commander had laughed about it. The bridge was at the center of the ship, protected by thick blast doors. Two guards stood at the entrance, armed with plasma rifles. They raised their weapons when they saw the humans approaching. Did not slow down. He raised his arm and fired the weapon built into his armor. A concentrated bolt of energy struck the first guard in the chest, blowing a hole through his armored body. The second guard managed to fire once, his plasma bolt splashing harmlessly against shields. Then a Marine beside shot the second guard in the head. The blast doors were sealed, but that was not a problem. Attached a shaped charge to the center of the door and stepped back. Breaching. The explosion was controlled, directed inward. The blast doors crumbled. Smoke and debris filled the air, walked through without waiting for it to clear. The bridge was chaos. Officers scrambled to their feet, some reaching for weapons, others frozen in terror. In the center of it all, sitting in his command throne, was High Commander. He was larger in person than had expected, nearly 3 meters tall, his black armor gleaming even in the flickering emergency lights. His compound eyes tracked the human Marines as they spread out across the bridge, securing every exit, covering every officer. "You are Captain," said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "I recognize your armor configuration, Terran Marine Corps, Special Operations." Removed his helmet. His face was hard, marked by old scars and new rage. "And you are the Butcher of New." His mandibles clicked. Butcher, such a human word, we call it pacification. 14 million people, women, children, bobbies in their beds. They were in the way of progress. Wanted to kill him. He wanted to cross the bridge, tear from his throne, and beat him to death with his bare hands. But that was not his purpose here. Admiral Park had been clear. Needed to live, for now. "My admiral has a message for the Confederacy," said. He activated a holographic projector on his arm. Admiral Park's image flickered to life in the center of the bridge. Every officer stared at it. His compound eyes narrowed. "To the Helix Confederacy," Park's hologram said, "for 300 years you have treated humanity as lesser beings. You have stolen from us, enslaved us, murdered us. We endured because we believed in peace, in coexistence. You mistook our patience for weakness." Her voice was steady, clear, carrying the weight of centuries of anger. "New taught us the truth. There is no peace with tyrants. There is no coexistence with those who see us as prey. You killed 14 million of our people and expected us to do nothing." She paused. "You expected wrong." The hologram shifted. Now it showed the battlefield outside. The burning wreckage of 120 warships, debris spreading across thousands of kilometers. Not a single enemy vessel had survived. "This is what remains of your armada," Park continued. 120 ships, destroyed in less than an hour. Your weapons could not touch us. Your shields could not protect you. Your commanders could not save you. The image shifted again, showing the Typhoon itself. Its massive hull, its bristling weapons, its dark armor untouched by any enemy fire. "This is the Hurricane-class battleship, the first of its kind. We have 14 more under construction. Each one carries enough firepower to destroy a planet, and we have the will to use them." Park's image returned to the center of the display. "You have 30 standard days to comply with our demands. Withdraw all Confederacy forces from human space. Release all human prisoners in your custody. Return all resources you have stolen from our colonies. If you comply, this incident will be considered closed." Her eyes hardened. "If you do not comply, we will consider it an act of war. We will come for your fleets. We will come for your colonies. We will come for your, and we will not stop until the Helix Confederacy is nothing but a memory." The hologram zoomed out to show the entire destroyed armada once more. "What happened here today will be remembered as mercy. Do not test our patience again." The hologram faded. Silence filled the bridge. Officers stared at where the image had been, their compound eyes wide with shock. Some were trembling, others looked like they might vomit. Was the only one who seemed unmoved. He sat in his throne, his 4 arms resting on the armrests, his posture unchanged. "Impressive speech," he said, "but speeches do not win wars. The Confederacy will not bow to threats from prey animals." Step closer to him. "You still do not understand, do you? Look around you. Your fleet is dead. Your ship is crippled. Your crew is surrendering. And you sit there talking about the Confederacy like it can save you. The Confederacy is eternal. You have won 1 battle. We have won 1,000. We only need to win 1 more." Gestured to his Marines, "Take him." 4 Marines approached throne. The High Commander did not resist. He allowed himself to be pulled to his feet, his massive arms bound behind his back with energy restraints. His compound eyes never left his face. "You think you are predators now," said as they led him away. "You think you have become the hunters, but you do not understand what you have done. The Confederacy will not negotiate with terrorists. They will send everything they have to destroy you." Followed him out of the bridge. "Good, we will be waiting." They marched through the dying ship, past surrendered crew members, past sealed compartments, past the bodies of those who had chosen to fight. When they reached the shuttle, shoved inside and secured him to a seat. The shuttle lifted off, leaving the Crimson Claw behind. As they flew toward the Typhoon, looked out the viewport at the battlefield below. The wreckage stretched for hundreds of kilometers, twisted metal, frozen bodies, the remains of what had once been the pride of the Confederacy's military. 1 hour, that was all it had taken. 1 hour to destroy what they had spent centuries building. 1 hour to change the balance of power in the entire galaxy. Thought about his own family, his parents, who had spent their lives bowing to Confederacy inspectors, his brother who had died in a mining accident on a world the Confederacy had claimed as their own, his niece, who would grow up in a galaxy where humans were no longer prey. The shuttle docked with the Typhoon, was taken to the brig where he would wait while the Confederacy decided how to respond, reported to the bridge. Admiral Park was standing at the viewport looking out at the stars. Captain stood beside her. Around them, bridge officers continued their work, monitoring systems, tracking the few remaining escape pods, coordinating with the rest of the fleet. "It is done," said. Park did not turn around. Did he have anything to say? He said the Confederacy would send everything to destroy us. "Good, that means they are afraid." Spoke up. "Admiral, we are receiving transmissions from human colonies across the sector. News of our victory is spreading. Our people are celebrating." Park nodded slowly. "They deserve to celebrate. They have waited a long time for this day." She finally turned to face her officers. Her expression was tired but resolute. "But our work is not finished. This was only the first step. The Confederacy will not surrender easily. They will come for us. They will try to crush us before we can become a true threat." "Let them come," said. Park met his eyes. "They will, and when they do we will be ready. Signal the fleet, set course for Sector 9. We have more hunting to do." The Typhoon's engines roared to life. The massive battleship turned, aligning itself with the distant stars. Behind it, the rest of the Terran fleet followed. They left the battlefield behind, but the message they had written there would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer prey. Humanity was the hunter now. And the hunt had only just begun. The Confederacy Council chamber on Axiom Prime was silent. 12 representatives sat in a circle around a central display showing the battle footage, the destruction of the Armada, the untouchable human flagship, Admiral Park's ultimatum. They had watched it 15 times already. Although was the oldest member of the council, his species had been part of the Confederacy for 8,000 years. He had seen empires rise and fall. He had witnessed wars that burned entire star systems, but he had never seen anything like this. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. They were considered the of the Confederacy species, serving as diplomats and advisors rather than warriors. Had spent his life preventing conflicts, negotiating treaties, building bridges between different species. Now he sat in his chair and wondered if anything he had done in his centuries of service had mattered at all. "This is an act of war," declared of the. He was a stocky creature covered in brown fur, with powerful arms and a deep, booming voice. They were industrialists, builders of ships and weapons. They had supplied the Confederacy's military for generations. "We must respond with overwhelming force, crush these humans before they become a real threat." "With what force?" asked Vex of the. She was slender and graceful, with iridescent scales that shifted colors when she moved. There were merchants, controlling much of the Confederacy's trade networks. "You saw the footage. Our weapons did nothing to that ship. Our entire armada was destroyed in less than 1 hour. What do you propose we use to overwhelm them?" "We have other fleets," insisted. "The alone can field 200 warships within a standard month." "And they will die just as they died," Vex replied coldly. "We have been using the same weapons technology for 500 years. The humans have clearly developed something beyond our understanding. Sending more ships to fight them would be sending our people to slaughter." The council erupted in argument. Representatives shouted at each other, accusing, blaming, demanding action without having any idea what action to take. Watched them silently. Finally, High Magistrate called for order. He was an ancient creature, his body more machine than flesh, kept alive by technology that had been old when most of the other representatives were born. As the leader of the Confederacy Council, his word was law. "Enough," said, his voice crackling through artificial speakers. "We gain nothing from fighting among ourselves. You have studied the humans longer than anyone. What do you recommend?" All eyes turned to. The old took a moment to gather his thoughts. Then he spoke, his voice slow and careful. "I have watched humanity since they first reached for the stars. I was present when we debated whether to allow them into the Confederacy's territory. I voted to permit it. At the time, I believed they were harmless, just another primitive species struggling to survive." He paused, his large black eyes sweeping across the council. "I was wrong." The chamber fell silent. "We made a critical error in our assessment of humanity. We looked at their short and called them weak. We looked at their small bodies and called them fragile. We looked at their chaotic societies and called them primitive. But we forgot one essential truth." Stood, his ancient joints creaking with the effort. "Earth is a death world, a planet of extremes, massive gravity, violent weather, predators on every continent, diseases that would kill most species in hours. And yet humanity did not merely survive there. They dominated. They became the apex predators of a world designed to kill them." He walked slowly around the central display, looking at the frozen image of the TSS Typhoon. "They did not achieve this dominance through strength. They are not the strongest creatures on their world. They did not achieve it through speed or natural armor or venomous bites. They achieved it through something far more dangerous." He stopped and faced the council. "They adapt, they learn, they refuse to give up. When their ancestors faced a predator, they did not run and hide. They studied it, found its weaknesses, and hunted it to extinction. Every obstacle, every threat, every challenge only made them more determined." Snorted, "Pretty words, but what does this have to do with our current situation?" "Everything," replied. "For 300 years we treated humanity as servants. We taxed their colonies. We restricted their trade. We dismissed their complaints and ignored their suffering, and they endured it. They bowed their heads and followed our rules. His voice hardened. We thought they were being obedient. We were wrong. They were watching, learning, studying our technology, analyzing our tactics, finding our weaknesses. And when one of our fleets killed 14 million of their civilians, they were ready. He gestured at the display. This ship is not the product of months of angry engineering. It is the product of decades of careful preparation. They knew this day would come. They planned for it. While we grew complacent, believing our power was unchallengeable, they were building the tools to challenge it. High Magistrate leaned forward. What are you saying? I am saying that we awakened something that should have been left sleeping. These humans are not like the other species we have conquered. They do not surrender when the odds are against them. They do not accept defeat as final. They adapt, they overcome, and they never forget. He returned to his seat. If we go to war with them, we will be fighting an enemy who has spent 3 centuries preparing for exactly that war. An enemy who knows our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses better than we know ourselves. An enemy who has nothing left to lose and everything to gain. Then what do you propose? Asked. Surrender to their demands. Yes, said simply. The council exploded again. Representatives shouted denials, protests, accusations of cowardice, pounded his fists on his console. Vex hissed in outrage. Others joined the chaos. Waited patiently for the noise to subside. I am not proposing surrender out of cowardice, he said when they finally quieted. I am proposing it out of wisdom. The humans have demanded 3 things: withdrawal from their space, release of their prisoners, and return of stolen resources. These are not unreasonable demands. They are not asking us to dissolve the Confederacy or surrender our territory. They are asking us to stop treating them as prey. He spread his hands. If we grant their demands, we lose nothing of true value: some trade routes, some prisoners, some resources that we stole from them in the first place. In return, we avoid a war that we cannot win. Cannot win, snarled. We are the Helix Confederacy. We have ruled this galaxy we have crushed every rebellion, conquered every enemy. You would have us cower before these animals. Yes, said. Because these animals just destroyed our finest fleet without losing a single ship. Because they have more of those battleships being built. Because every day we delay, they grow stronger while we grow weaker. He looked directly at. I am old enough to remember the war. Do you remember what they said before we destroyed them? They said the Confederacy was weak. They said they would sweep us aside. They were wrong, and we burned their worlds to cinders. His voice softened. But there were fools who attacked without preparation, without understanding their enemy. The humans are not fools. They spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment. If we fight them, we will not be facing we will be facing ourselves in the early days of our expansion, when we were hungry and determined and willing to sacrifice everything for victory. Silence fell. High Magistrate spoke finally. We will vote, all those in favor of complying with human demands. One by one, hands rose. First, then Vex who understood that trade with humans would be more profitable than war against them. Then others, slowly, reluctantly, until finally even raised his hand. The vote was unanimous. 3 weeks later, Admiral Park stood on the observation deck of the TSS Typhoon, which was now stationed in orbit above Earth. Captain joined her, as he often did in quiet moments. Below them, Earth shone blue and green and beautiful. Human cities sparkled on the night side. Ships launched from orbital stations, free now to travel wherever they pleased without Confederacy restrictions. The last Confederacy patrol left human space yesterday, reported. All prisoners have been released. Resource transports are returning stolen materials to the colonies. Nodded slowly. They faster than I expected. They were afraid. Fear fades. We need to make sure they remember why they were afraid. Studied her profile. She looked tired. The past months had taken a toll on her. The weight of commanding this mission, of carrying the hopes of humanity on her shoulders, had aged her visibly. "What now?" he asked. Was quiet for a long moment. "Now we build more ships, more weapons, more defenses. The Confederacy accepted our demands, but they have not accepted us as equals. They still see us as a threat to be eliminated. They are just waiting for the right moment." She turned to face him. "We need to make sure that moment never comes. We need to become so powerful that no one in the galaxy would ever dare attack us again. Not out of fear alone, but out of respect." "That could take decades," said. "Centuries even." "Then it takes decades, centuries, however long is necessary." She looked back at Earth. "Our ancestors survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly wiped them out. They built civilizations from nothing. They reached for the stars when they had every reason to believe it was impossible." A small smile touched her lips. "If they could do all that, we can do this. We can build a future where our children and never have to bow their heads to anyone." Nodded. "I believe we can." Far below, on the surface of Earth, celebrations continued. Humans danced in the streets, wept with joy, embraced each other as they realized their world had changed forever. Above them, the typhoon hung in orbit, silent and watchful, a reminder of what humanity had become, a promise of what they would become. The galaxy had learned its lesson. Humanity was no one's prey, not anymore, not ever again.